Before I get into this video properly, I want to shout out a record that I didn't get to do a review of, but I thought it was worth your time anyway. I was initially planning to talk about this, but then I ended up not doing a full review. That is the new Rebecca Black EP, Rebecca Black Was Here. Main reason I didn't end up talking about it is because I learned that it was actually an EP and it only had a few tracks on it, so I didn't think I could get a full review out of that, but I did listen to the record and it is quite good. I had a lot of fun with the quirky pop production on it. Rebecca's vocals are pretty awesome. To me, it sounds like Rebecca Black was really inspired by something like 100 Gex on this EP, but that didn't stop it from being very fun. It was probably one of the most fun listens I've had with a new record this year, and it definitely would have gotten an excellent rating had I done a full review of it. Check it out if you haven't already. You might really enjoy it. Now onto the proper video. Welcome back to another multi-album review, and as you can tell from the title, these are the two records that I'm going to be covering this week. We have the new Doja Cat album, Planet Her, as well as the new Tyler, the Creator album, Call Me If You Get Lost. I knew I was going to be looking at both of these records no matter what, but I didn't know that Doja Cat's album was going to be releasing this weekend. I don't know if I just forgot or if something happened that made her surprise release it, but the release just kind of snuck up on me. But I was going to look at that along with Tyler's album, so I thought why not make it a 2-in-1. So let's not waste our time on a long ass intro. I've probably got a good thumbnail with these albums already. Let's get into the video. First off, let's start with the new Doja Cat album, Planet Her. Doja Cat is a California-based singer, songwriter, and rapper who first started blowing up back in 2018 with her debut album Amala, which contained the viral hit single Moo. While Doja herself considers the song to be something of a throwaway, I initially just associated her with that song so much that I honestly just thought she was a meme artist. I didn't know she was a for realsies artist until the release of her 2019 album Hot Pink, which included hit singles like Juicy, Streets, and of course the iconic Say So that got to #1 on the Billboard charts thanks to a prominent but entirely unnecessary remix featuring Nicki Minaj. And while Doja has been a controversial name for more reasons than one, she continues to maintain a huge standing with her music, as evidenced by this album's leadoff single Kiss Me More with SZA hitting #4 on the Hot 100. Personally, I never got around to listening to Hot Pink, not out of malice, I just let it slip past me in 2019, but I have enjoyed quite a few singles from it, like the aforementioned original version of Say So as well as Juicy, and I did really like Kiss Me More leading up to this album. I've also enjoyed her as a feature on several tracks that she's appeared on, like the remixes of The Weeknd's In Your Eyes and Ariana Grande's 34+35. I think she's a very charismatic and fun artist, and her blends of hip-hop and R&B make her, in my eyes, one of the most exciting names in modern music. So, admittedly, I was pretty excited about this album. Even though I mentioned that its release snuck up on me a bit, I was looking forward to hearing the full record. It's 14 tracks and 44 minutes, which is about the standard length for a pop album, and with a strong first single, I was pretty excited. It's a shame, though, that I have to admit this album disappointed me. I didn't find myself disliking it, but I just desperately wanted it to be better. Doja herself is a great performer, and vocally she has a lot of fun with a lot of these tracks. You can go up and down the list of songs here and find no shortage of humorous, charismatic, infectious performances. While the production is mostly just pretty decent stuff, Doja can elevate that with her great vocals and rap flows. My big issue with this album, though, comes from the fact that it's missing one of the key elements to Doja's biggest songs: hooks. One of the things that's made some of my favorite Doja Cat songs pop is that they have snappy, immediate, catchy-ass hooks that don't leave my head. Songs like Juicy and Say So were so good because they hooked so easily and so naturally. They had snap, flair, and memorability to them to make me want to go back. With this album, a lot of the hooks were killing me, and I struggled to find a lot of immediate earworms despite giving the record multiple listens. While thematically I like the ideas presented in a song like Woman, what with how Doja explores what it's like to be a woman, I don't really care as much for the Afrobeat instrumental, and the hook just really failed to grab me. And while I like the bouncy beat and infectious energy on a track like Get Into It Yeah, I thought the chorus at points just got more annoying than anything. The song itself often felt like Doja just making her own version of a Nicki Minaj song, which in theory I don't mind, but I couldn't listen to this and think anything other than, wow, I bet TikTok will like this one. Tracks like Love to Dream, Ain't Shit, Imagine, and Alone all have some ideas that I like, but the fact that they don't have that strong of a hook to tie them together just made them more boring than I was hoping for. Sure, there are a few decent points that I like, such as the very bouncy Naked, the spacey Been Like This that kinda reminds me of a Weeknd song, and the trap banger of a pre-release single Need to Know, even though it's still Fuck Dr. Luke. But I think the record just doesn't go on a consistent enough streak of high points. They're scattered too few and far between, and there's not enough moments that jump out and stand head and shoulders above everything else. The album is also loaded with features, most of whom do a decent job, but unfortunately might overshadow Doja a bit. Payday has a pretty solid trap beat and a decent implementation of light guitar strums, but I just couldn't get past the goofy vocal inflections on Doja and Young Thug. drug, and it made me laugh more than it made me want to come back. I Don't Do Drugs has a hook that really threatens to bore to death, but the song to me is heavily lifted by Ariana Grande. It shouldn't be surprised that Ariana dominates on this because that's all she does, dominate, but the rest of the track doesn't grab me and I feel like I only come back to it for Ariana. Same for the track You Right featuring The Weeknd. You guys know The Weeknd is one of my favorite artists, so this was the track I was most excited for on the album. Unfortunately, it's another song I wish I liked a lot more. Doja sounds good, Abel sounds awesome, the filters on his vocals almost make them sound like they come from the Trilogy era. The beat is average, the hook is killing me, it's just disappointing. Now there are a few collaborations near the back of the album that I enjoyed, particularly the track Options with J.I.D, which is a bouncy electronic trap banger that both Doja and J.I.D go extremely hard on. Both of them fit perfectly on this beat, they flow incredibly, and with how excited I was for the track, it certainly delivered. And as I said, I do love Kiss Me More with SZA. I know it does sound like a second coming of Say So, and some feel like it's trying to ape the success of that, but it's so damn snappy, catchy, the hook is an absolute delight, and I think Doja and SZA play off each other perfectly on the song. I'm at least glad Doja picked this to end the album off on. Even so though, I really wish I enjoyed this album more than I did. I know Doja is a great performer and she definitely shows that throughout the record, bringing some lovely singing, great rap flows, and funny charisma to her performances, and she also knows how to pick decent features as well. Unfortunately, I wish she was able to craft some better hooks. Most of them just end up going sour very fast and it makes the songs feel like they're missing something that could have topped them off perfectly. At times, the album feels like ordering a pizza, opening it up and seeing how delicious it looks only to take a bite and find out they didn't put any sauce on it. Like, you can still eat it, but with every bite you're gonna feel like it's missing something. All in all, not a bad album, but I really wish it was better. And that's why on my rating scale I'm definitely gonna give Doja Cat's Planet Her an okay rating. As I said, not bad, but given how much I've enjoyed some of her biggest singles, I really wish this was better. Now let's move on to the new Tyler, the Creator album, Call Me If You Get Lost. California rapper Tyler, the Creator, aka Wolf Haley, aka Tyler Baudelaire. He's back with his 6th studio album and his first since 2019's Igor. Tyler's obviously been quite a beloved rapper over the last decade, and with 2017's Flower Boy, he was starting to see even more acclaim than usual. With Igor, he had his shining moment in more ways than one. The record was one of the most acclaimed of his career, and it was honored on many year-end lists back in 2019. It became Tyler's first #1 on the Billboard 200, and it also earned him his first Grammy for Best Rap Album. It feels like Tyler's been in a groove where he can do no wrong, and that's why naturally there was excitement when billboards popped up advertising this album. Now it's here, and it's 16 tracks in 52 minutes. It's significantly longer than each of Tyler's last 2 albums, though not quite as long as some of his early ones. Even with the long length, Tyler makes another wonderful album, though I can assume there will be some people who may not be as mind-blown by it as they were with something like Igor. In general, I would argue that this album is a lot less conceptual than Igor and a lot more straightforward. There's no big grand idea going on here, and there's not a big overarching story either. Rather, its big concept is that the album feels a lot like a throwback to 2000s hip-hop mixtapes, complete with DJ Drama himself yelling all throughout the album to make it feel even more like his Gangsta Grillz mixtapes. Given that it's a bit less conceptual, some might be turned off by that, but what I don't think is a turnoff is the fact that this album is loaded with bangers. It feels like Tyler kind of slips back into the style of his older records, though without a lot of the wildly insensitive bars that made him such a polarizing figure back in the day, but he still showcases a lot of the personal and artistic growth that he's seen since his early days as a provocateur. The beat selection remains solid, mixing hard trap and hip-hop styles with a few moments of R&B, jazz, and soul that we saw on Tyler's last few albums. And Tyler stuffs this thing with features, but manages to do so without taking attention from himself. And there are a lot of great high points on the album too. We have the track Corso, which is a spacey trap banger that sees Tyler getting very aggressive and cutthroat on his performance, while letting his flow constantly switch up in very clever ways. There's also the celebratory Lemonhead, which is also a very dirty, dark trap banger that sees Tyler have some strong chemistry with featured artist 42 Dugg. Dugg keeps up nicely with Tyler, and even though the song is pretty short, it still feels very fulfilling. There's also What's Ya Name, which is a soulful, jazz-leaning jam that has a small appearance from Ty Dolla $ign, who I do personally wish had a little more time to shine because he would have absolutely killed this beat. I will give credit though to Youngboy Never Broke Again, who comes through with a very strong verse. I wasn't sure how he was gonna fit over this song, but he spits with a very emotional inflection and has some very focused lyricism as well. This might honestly be one of my favorite guest appearances from Youngboy. There's also the leadoff single Lumberjack, which is very short and a little more silly, with Tyler just kind of goofing off and being a bit funny. As it is though, the song is a trap-leaning banger that Tyler goes hard on, giving off this cold tone in his voice that fits it perfectly. Hot Wind Blows is Tyler's twist on Penny Goodwin's 1974 song Slow Hot Wind, and the sampling job is pretty fantastic. Tyler's flow is chilly as usual, but I also really enjoyed Lil Wayne's guest verse. He goes hard hard and speeds up his flow without it feeling gimmicky, and it's probably one of the best Wayne verses I've heard in a while. It's one of those reminders that when Wayne is inspired, he can still absolutely dominate on a track. Massa digs into some of America's deep-rooted issues with racism on account of slavery, and Tyler gets very personal and introspective on us here as well. He does keep his flow very creative, and even though his vocal inflection is a bit quieter on the track, there's still a good emotional edge to the song that keeps it interesting. Manifesto is Tyler coming to terms with his controversial past, especially in the context of this social media age with which we live in. Beyond the hazy, spacey instrumental, I think what really lifts this track for me is the chemistry between Tyler and Domo Genesis. They both eat this instrumental up with cutthroat, energetic performances, and they really bring out the best in each other. Rise is definitely a really spunky, upbeat track that feels very laid back and fun in comparison to some of the darkest songs on here. Daisy World also has a small appearance, and her smooth vocals add to my enjoyment of the track. I do feel like there are a few cuts that pad out this track list just a little bit. There's the forlorn intro cut, Sir Baudelaire, where Tyler flows nicely over a light, soulful instrumental, but the song ends up being too short that it hardly leaves much of an impact on me. And while I wasn't too opposed to DJ Drama's constant screaming on the album, the song can feel more of him than Tyler, and as the intro to the album, it gave the wrong impression that he was gonna overtake this thing for me. There are also cuts like Mama Talk and Bless that are just short spoken word tracks that last about a minute at most. I get what they're going for, and the words being spoken are great, but again, I'm not usually crazy about spoken word tracks, so these just don't do too much for me. And there are a few full-length tracks that I really couldn't get into. Run It Up is probably the album's weakest point in my eyes. It's kind of lighter and it's interesting in the way it goes into success, but the song is built on a bit too repetitive of a structure to keep me hooked. Tyler himself is spitting, of course, even though there are parts where it sounds like he's doing a Kid Cudi impression, but the song is just too repetitive and it feels like Tizo Touchdown doesn't add much to it either. And the two-part Sweet / I Thought You Wanted to Dance is a track that leans the most into the R&B and funk vibes, to the point where this sounds like something that could have been on Igor. I absolutely love the shining, glimmering feel of the instrumental, and Tyler bringing back some of his singing from Igor is absolutely welcome. Brent Faiyaz does a decent job with his vocals, and Fans Hughes sounds very lovely on the second part of the song too. My big issue though is the fact that this song is almost 10 minutes long. I'm personally not super crazy about a lot of long tracks like this, and given that this is a bit of a slow burner, it's easy to lose interest as it goes on. It's honestly one of those two-part tracks that genuinely could have been split into two individual songs. Outside of those though, the album does end off pretty strong. Juggernaut is a very distorted, bassy banger that sees Tyler coming through with one of his grimiest performances on the album. I was initially unsure of how Lil Uzi Vert was going to sound on this track, but his fast flow stands out amazingly here. And I was also very impressed with the guest verse from Pharrell Williams too. Being a star-studded collaboration, this one did not disappoint. And it was also impressive how much they were able to stuff into such a short track, given that it's only about 2.5 minutes. Wilshire is another long cut at about 8.5 minutes, but I think this ends up being a better long track for me. A lot of that comes from the overall structure of the song. It almost feels like a freestyle where Tyler is telling the story of a very difficult, emotional breakup. Even as it goes on for such a long time, Tyler's assured performance and the quality of his storytelling managed to keep my attention throughout the entire listen. And the album's closer, Safari, goes into Tyler's love of and desire to travel. The beat feels a bit minimal, but also has a celebratory feel to it, as if Tyler has gotten through something rough and is at a point where he's comfortable and happier than usual. He also goes a lot faster with his flow, but does so in a way that fits nicely for the song, making this a very strong closer to the record. Overall, I definitely enjoyed my time with Tyler, the Creator's new album. I know there might be some people who will find it different from Igor and could potentially be disappointed, but I think artists don't need to have their new music constantly compared to their most mind-blowing work. And not everything needs to be this large-scale, high-concept thing. So yeah, this is not as conceptual as Igor, but whether it is or not doesn't matter, because the album is still very good. While I know the album's already polarized some for its 2000s mixtape concept, mostly because of DJ Drama's constant screaming, that part of it didn't bother me too much. I was too busy enjoying a lot of the smart and varied production, Tyler's consistently entertaining performances, and the numerous top-notch features all throughout the album. It's been so great to see the growth that Tyler's shown as an artist since his earliest records, and this is another fantastic example of that. Even if the record is a bit more conventional for Tyler, the album is constantly elevated thanks to its instrumentals and performances, showing that even playing it safe can result in some awesome music. Which is why it should be obvious, but on my rating scale, I'm definitely going to say Tyler, the Creator's Call Me If You Get Lost is going to get an excellent rating from me. Really enjoyed this thing. Tyler did a fantastic job. I'm sure you've already listened to it, but if you haven't, fix that. This album is definitely well worth your time. So yeah, that's this week's new music. For the most part, pretty decent. There was one disappointment, but otherwise, nothing to dampen the mood. That, of course, is just my opinion on these records. What did you guys think about them? Whichever of these you listened to, did you love them, hate them, were you just completely indifferent towards them? I feel like I already know the answer, but but which one did you prefer? Whatever your thoughts and opinions are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked down in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. In terms of new reviews, I'm not sure what's coming next or what's releasing over the month of July. It seems like artists are getting a little bit busier though and starting to drop albums at a more frequent pace. So between that and 10 years later, I'm sure I'm going to have plenty of videos. So stay tuned for those, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.